you beautiful souls who are in the house, who are looking at us live and on the live chats on our feeds and LinkedIn and Facebook groups. We're so happy to have you here live. We are super excited. You're all champions of compassion, and I know there's many architects of positive change who are on the show today, excluding our incredible guest, Adele. And I'm thrilled to welcome all of you regular people back onto this live show on A Dose of Positivity. For those of you who don't know me, I am Donna Maltz, and I am also known as Mama Donna. And today's gathering promises to be nothing short of inspiring. And we are diving into another incredible topic this week about grief and trauma relief. And my special guest, as I mentioned earlier, is Adele Anderson. And we will be embarking on this enlightening journey together, the beautiful side of grief, death, and dying, which happens every day to our skin, to situations. So I really hope all of you here will open your hearts and share any experiences that you might have. But just before we go on to the questions on the interview, I just have a few short housekeeping gems. Reminder, this is a live show, and if you're listening to the replay, please put your comments and your feedback, anything into either the YouTube channel or our podcast stations. We get back to all the people, so feel free if you're shy and you don't want to respond live here, put your comments in whatever place you happen to be capturing this incredible interview. I also want to remind you guys that we have a great Facebook group that you could be part of, and we'll put that link in all of the places so you can find out how to get more daily doses of positivity. So if you have a thought, anybody who's online and you're eager to share, again, I encourage you to sprinkle your brilliance into the chat. Your emotions, your passion, whatever it is. So we are so grateful for the participation that we get each and every week from these groups. So before we dive into the topic, grace, growth, and beauty within the death and dying process, I am going to be sharing a little section from my new book that's coming up called Death, What Is It Good For? Absolutely Something. So here we go. Without further ado, it'll just be a minute or two, and then I'm going to introduce you to Adele. Our cells perpetually regenerate, carrying within them the echoes of their own death, a constant cycle of rebirth and dissolution. Even the skin we wear, a protective shield that carries the marks of our experiences, undergo its own form of renewal, shedding old layers to reveal the freshness beneath. Grief in its myriad form is our response to these farewells. It's the complex web of emotions that encompass the chasm left by the departing. Grief doesn't discriminate. It doesn't rank losses by importance. Instead, it is a fluid entity that finds its way into the spaces where attachment once thrived. Through acknowledgement and embracing these various forms of death and the grief they invoke, we uncover a profound strength within ourselves. Each goodbye, whether monumental or seemingly mundane, as of losing our skin, hones our ability to cope with life's most inevitable departures, our own. As we learn to release with grace and dignity, we uncover the pregnant beauty of aging gracefully. Each wrinkle and silver strained stands a testament. Each wrinkle and silver, I got some, stands the testament to a life well lived. So today, join me as we navigate the labyrinth of losses, as we honor the myriad of the faces of death and the tapestry of grief they weave. For in doing so, we confront the intricate mosaic of life itself. It's a journey that's marked by countless endings, each nurturing the soil from which new beginnings sprouts. And here I am today with my special guest and authority on this subject, Adele Anderson. Welcome, Adele.
Thank you, Donna.
So excited to read your bio to everybody because it's so powerful, you guys. Adele is an NLP trainer. She's a homeopath. She's a death doula. She's an Akashic reader and a grief coach. And she has had the honor of helping those seeking to ease their painful losses and amplify happiness since 2002. She often says drowning in a capsized plane, which we're going to hear about, was easier than becoming a widow. Grieving her life partner proved catastrophic, a deep wound that still weeps with the Band-Aid when the Band-Aid is pulled off and raw and tender when touched. So beautiful. I'm getting goosebumps reading this. Loss challenges every aspect of her life, but she did find relief through community, through neuroscience, through nutrition, and by embodying a rich spiritual practice. Adele is an NLP trainer, homeopath, death doula. I already said all that. Along with being an author, she has been on countless stages, and she shares her message of hope. She knows that life always offers us more than what we see or believe is possible, even when we grieve. How do you find happiness when life doesn't look so bright? Well, Adele is here today to turn on the light. And Adele, I am so excited to bring you on. I met Adele for the first time in a networking group of these other powerful, incredible women doing magic in the world. And now here you are on the show. Adele, welcome. And please come on stage and share with everybody a little bit of background and how you moved to this beautiful place on this island in Canada, and a little bit about your beautiful husband who is with us in spirit right now.
Thank you. As we know, life is a journey. And so we navigate it as it comes along. We don't often know what's coming ahead. And so this unexpected part of being human is a challenge and also a gift. I did have sort of this amazing experience when I was 27. I was out flying with a friend. And so you can imagine the adventures of a 27-year-old high in the sky, flying over patchwork green fields that were banked on either side by snow-capped mountains. And we had just finished this amazing day dropping in and out of farmers' fields and crawling through barbed wire fences to go into these hole-in-the-wall cafes, and asked if we wanted to have another cup of coffee. And we'd say, sorry, we have to fly. But on the way back to the airport, we were flying with another friend, and they passed between us and the sun and shook their wings, and they turned into a silhouette as they headed off, just as the pilot of my plane put his arm out. And through the headphones, I heard him say he'd like to go down and do a skip and go off of the river that was far below us. And so without a care in the world, I felt the nose of the plane tilt, and we pummeled towards the earth, and then we hit the water. And that plane flipped. He had left his landing gear down. And so when that plane hit the water, it catapulted. And it flipped so fast, the windows were open. I saw him go under, and my brain registered, take a breath. But as I went to take a breath, my mouth filled with water. And there I was, upside down in a capsized plane, pulled along by the current, gravity pulling me down, buoyancy pulling me up. The current was, twisting us in a knot. And I realized that I was trapped. I tried really hard to just sort of buck out of the seat, but I realized that my 3-point harness was holding me tight, and I couldn't find how to disconnect. I had been wearing a life jacket, and so the straps of the life jacket had wrapped around those harnesses and obliterated my attempt to find the release. So pretty quickly, I started to get that tingling sensation in my arms and my legs. And I'd been a lifeguard when I was a kid. So I knew what that was, that I was running out of oxygen and I was running out of it fast. And just as that thought went through my head, my life began to flash in front of my eyes from the moment of my birth. And it went all the way through my life, through millions and millions of images. And then it came up to that moment in time, and it stopped, and my body separated from my mind. And then my perspective changed. All of a sudden, I was floating somewhere above in this bright light, and it was illuminating what was happening below. I had very little attachment to that blonde woman down there whose hair was wildly blowing in the water. From where I was quite fine. I didn't have a concern in the world. I knew who I was. I had all my memories intact. And what was happening to her down there didn't really seem to matter. But then I was given a gift of what would happen if I were to die. And that was a scene of a movie, or a scene of two police officers walking through my parents' front yard, up their big red brick steps, and knocking on the door. And my parents answered the door, and I couldn't hear what was being said, but I simply watched their facial expressions change. And it went from confusion to acknowledgement, and then to horror. And at that point, my mom dropped to her knees and she covered her head with her hands and she screamed. And she screamed really loud inside my head. And it snapped me back into my reality that I was upside down, drowning in a capsized plane. And I made a choice right then that I was not going to die that way, that I was getting out of the plane. I was getting out of it now. I was back in my body. Boom. And my brain did something phenomenal, which I never knew was possible. And I tried for years to figure out how I could do that every single day. So my brain sourced the information I needed. All of those images that had flashed forward in time began to go in reverse through millions of images backward in time until it found something that would help me. It was a movie that I'd watched decades before. I didn't know the name of the movie or what it was about, but the scene in front of my mind's eye gave me all the information I needed to escape a plane that had crashed and overturned in water. And I followed the script of that movie, and I escaped the plane and saved my own life. So I always say, no matter how dire life circumstances seem, out of breath, out of time, we still have the ability to make choices that can change the trajectory of my life. And the other thing that I learned is when I wasn't afraid to die anymore. I felt like I'd been to the other side. I'd experienced, 17 out of the 19 criteria for a near-death experience. And so I had this amazing belief change, really, from a person who had very little spiritual knowledge to someone who felt I was an infinite being, and that this gift of being inside a body for a period of time was all it was, that we were on a continuum, that it was just a part of our evolution, that we move on without our physical body, as a light being, no arms, no legs, and simply taking our memories and everything that we've learned with us.
Oh my gosh. That is, I never heard that whole story. That was amazing. And I know you're writing another book. I hope the details are in that, because we could spend the whole show talking about that. But one thing that really stuck in my mind, and I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on this, because that was a lot, is, since we're really covering the topic of grief and how, like, the living, like, what snapped you out of that was this, your mom. Her grief was undeniably just pulled you out, she birthed you again. And
yeah, it was really a pivotal moment. With a lot of near-death experience, one of the criteria is you do get a chance to come back if you feel like you haven't finished what you were put on the planet to do, and if your body can sustain living, then this opportunity to come back and to figure it out a little bit more is there for us.
what was your mom's response when you came home and you told her this story?
You know what? I never told anybody for 25 years. It took me a long time. I got up, I was hypothermic by the time we had been picked up by a boat, like hours later. And we were soaking wet, of course, for hours sitting in darkness, and finally hailed a cab. You know, we had to walk to a marina, hail a cab, get home. So I poured myself into a tub. I was covered in gasoline and just sort of a bit numb. But the next morning I got up, I put my work clothes back on and went to work and never said a word to anybody. I don't know if I thought maybe I'd be in trouble in some way, or maybe people wouldn't believe me, but it wasn't until I started helping people through their life challenges that I kind of thought, you know, maybe it's time that I tell my story. And then, you know, lots of people have lots of questions. And over the years, I've interviewed lots of people who have had near-death experiences. One of my very dear friends, my ex-father-in-law, almost died on my floor one day. He was a very caustic, agnostic doctor. And before the ambulance door closed, he said, "I'm no longer afraid to die. I've been to the other side." And so I spoke at his funeral. I told his story of his experience for somebody who was really that left-sided medical doctor who had zero spiritual nature. But these types of experiences can change our belief systems in a nanosecond. And so, you know, belief systems are very difficult to change. And if we look at, you know, somebody like Robert Lanza, who in 2010 was considered one of the top most influential scientists in the world, he has a book out called Biocentrism and Beyond Biocentrism. He's considered the new Einstein of the day. And he says, we can no longer debate life after death. It is simply our belief systems that have not caught up, because science has already proven that it just is the way it is. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It simply changes form. And that is a universal law, and that's been around for centuries. And so, you know, we continue to have this conversation or not about life and death. And, you know, it's a fascinating topic. I love to talk about it. And anyway, it all worked until Willis got sick.
What was the name of the gentleman the Einstein of the day? I'd like
Robert Lanza.
Yeah, we'll put that in the chat. I have heard of him, and I'm much more curious to know. I just have one more question on that before we move on. Is I am wondering if who else was in the plane with you besides the pilot? Was your husband there with you?
No, it was before he was in my eye. So it was a previous boyfriend who, you know, had all the toys, and planes were one of them. So he did survive. He actually, I dove back, and I came back when I got out of the water. I got onto a pontoon, the overturned pontoon, and quickly dove back in the blackness. But the river was moving, and it was, you know, it was midnight or very, very late, maybe not that late because the sun was just going down. But, you know, there's some confusion in, you know, how to find somebody in the blackness. But on the third dive that I tried to get down and help him, he actually came up on his own. He was vomiting and he was in pretty bad shape, but we both survived.
Wow. Are you still in touch with him? Did he have a similar experience as you? And what about the pilot?
Yeah, he was the pilot. He lives in Asia now. I haven't been in touch with him for a couple decades.
So it was just the two of you in the plane?
Just the two. It was a two-seater.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, I really appreciate hearing that. I know that my father-in-law, who's no longer with us either, he had an out-of-body experience, and the medical team brought him back, and he had a similar, recollection. And most stories that you read, they don't speak as articulate as you did. I mean, that was really beautiful, but it is really interesting, and it's one of those things that helps us move on to the bulk of the conversation, is this, this fear of death, like how do we get beyond it, but also how do we, like, I mean, did your mom, she never knew, or she never knew? Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully she does now, because you're talking about it, and her spirit is soaring around going, I know why I do that. But no, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody else who's sharing their stories, because we like, we'll put the link to my most recent blog in there, but everybody kind of is hearing the buzz that COVID's going around again, and it's a pretty strong strand in some places, and hospitals are already gearing up, and we all know we went through this word, I mean, death. I mean, it was just like on the front page of everywhere, through that whole first phase of the COVID and the second phase of COVID, the toll, and people didn't just lose their loved ones and their pets. They lost their jobs. They lost their place where they could call home, because they couldn't afford to live there anymore. I mean, there was so much loss, so much death to recover from. So you kind of touched upon this, but I would love for you to so put the blog in there. It's a really good, powerful, heartfelt thing if you're struggling with finding more resources for grief. So please put that in there in the chat. So what are your beliefs about after death? Because I think that will help us get through this next wave of COVID, or whatever fears we might have. I think it's a topic we really need to dive into, what your beliefs are, but also sharing in a way that other people are challenged or excited of the opportunity to ask themselves that same question.
Mm-hmm. So my first thing I'm going to say is, if you are afraid of death, then you're doing yourself harm. In that, we can lean on the side of love, joy, or we can lean on the side of fear. And when we have fear in our body and we embody that, then our physiology believes us. So our body is our best friend, and it actually is believing what we're thinking, what we're saying, what our mindset is. And fear has the ability to interrupt our immune system, as does any negative emotion, anger, hysteria, sadness, interrupts our immune system for 6 to 8 hours at a time. So fear is doing nobody too much good too fast. And so I encourage you to lean on the side of, joy, hope. just to know that the science behind our ability to control our own physiology and our own wellness is so clear that it's no longer deniable, the power that we have with, this incredible mind that we all have between our ears. And so that's my first thing is, fear is overrated. Keep it for the stuff that really matters. And fear of death, I think that, it's something that maybe in Eastern cultures is talked about more, or the cycle of life and death. As you brought in the seasons. I love watching, the dying garden, the leaves changing colors of falling leaves, because it really teaches us that there is a cycle to all forms of life, but it doesn't necessarily mean that life is over. It's just maybe in a newer form. And so it kind of excites me to know what the next adventure is. Of course, when you've lost somebody, there is that immediate pain that's so intense that it's a bit difficult to see that rosy light. But I was very fortunate, as my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. In about 10 months, he passed. But he made a choice early on. If he was going to die, he was going to do it with kindness. So I was blessed with a very good patient, and he never said an unkind word. And I always say it was the year worth dying for, because we had a beautiful year where we took every moment as special. And we very seldom do that, living in the moment. And I encourage you to try it in that there's so much beauty if we really take to heart that the people that we love that are surrounding us have something to offer us in every moment, and we have the same to offer them. And so living in that true love and compassion and being with that person completely in all aspects of health and illness can be quite incredibly beautiful. And so, yeah, so that's what I would maybe encourage you to do. Like when we're in fear, we're usually thinking about the past or thinking about the future. And so staying in the moment where we can control most things that are going on with us is very powerful. And that's why we talk about breath, just paying attention to breath, because it does take us out of the future and out of the past and puts us right where we are right now, just breathing. So there's lots of tips and tools for keeping fear at bay, and to know that it is just a brain function, that if you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, then run. But it doesn't have too much relevance in everyday living, in that very few things are life and death. And even if they are, I guess the experience is there for us to choose how we go through it. And I think that was a gift to learn that as well, is that we do have a choice of how we experience our own death. That letting go, which can be quite poignant. I am a hospice volunteer, so there's some really interesting exercises to make us truly appreciate what it psychologically means in letting go of all of our favorite things, all of our favorite people, all of our stuff, all of our abilities, capabilities, as they begin to disappear or weaken. And I would recommend the exercise for anybody. It's not great for a party,
Yeah.
but it's very illuminating. And it really allowed me to appreciate what someone actually has to go through as a letting go process in their own death. So it's.
Can you share a little bit like how that felt for you? First of all, like letting go of your beloved that you, I mean, what a beautiful year, and what a wonderful thing to share with all of us, kind of helping us. Maybe, I know for me, just thinking about, premeditating or thinking about how you want your dying process to be. That's what I write about in Death, What Is It Good For? There's some really great tools in there too, but I would love to hear, like how your beliefs might have been shaken when you lose someone that you are so close with and love so much. How do you reconcile this with, what was your process getting over it? I mean, it's one thing to help somebody else, but how, when you really come down to it, what was the main thing that really helped you get over it?
There was many things that helped me. Yeah. And there's many things that I, found difficult. It is an unbelievable process, losing, your heart, losing that person that's so integral to everyday life. We lived and worked together, so we were together 24 hours a day for 30 years. And so, it's like losing your arm. It's such an incredible thing to experience, but witnessing a body that's dying. Willis was very physical. He designed and built her house. He was a builder. He was very muscular, strong, fit, he was the least likely person to die. So I always say that amongst all of our friends. Willis was a picture of vitality, 240, 6'4", big, strong, healthy guy until he wasn't. And he went down to probably about 150 pounds. I'm 5'3" and, weigh, I don't know, 110 or something like that. His legs were smaller than mine. He could barely carry his own weight at the end. So you see, and of course, a lot of therapies make you so sick, right? So when someone is taking chemotherapy, for example, they're going to experience all types of very horrifying things, losing your bowels, vomiting,
got it,
just being sick the whole way, right? And so it's very humiliating. In so many ways. Your dignity is compromised. And so there's a lot of that has to go on. And so, we as caregivers and friends around, hopefully offer grace through such difficult time, knowing that this person is really just sick and they're experiencing these drugs in their system, and how can we help them even with that? There's just so much there's so much of it, and it's so confusing. I always say it's like being dropped into a foreign land when you get a diagnosis that is life-threatening. If you're not in the medical system, there's a lot of Latin words that you won't understand. There's so much information, there's so many appointments. And so there is this, you feel a little bit like you're on a treadmill. So there's so much going on, the dynamics of that, even beyond the dying process, that just, keeping a regiment for yourself. Like I journaled, I had schedules on the fridge, I had to keep my routine super simple. I stopped working because I dedicated myself to his care. I'm not sure how people manage if they have to go 9 to 5. It's so daunting, really. After he died, I think I think in the beginning you're just in shock. There's that 2 or 3 weeks where it's so surreal that it's hard to comprehend. It gets worse before it gets better. So, it's hard to get out of bed, and yet you're so exhausted, you can't sleep because your mind is, grieving, you're overwhelmed. There's a million questions. You've got to fill in forms. You got to go make funeral arrangements, whatever it might be. So in that way, there's almost so much activity that's a saving grace that keeps you busy. Because if you're just sitting at home, I think it's the worst thing. There's also the other side of someone dying. You're loved. You get to know how much you are loved. People love you. And so you're going to be graced with friends bringing food over, wanting to have, conversations that matter. You're just going to be showered with, just people's love. And so that's amazing to experience that. And what I would encourage people is to lean on the people that are around you. You don't have to do it alone. Community is important. Keeping a routine is important. Eating well is important. Staying hydrated is important, like basic stuff. And that's maybe all you can do in the early days, is just keep it as together as you can. Nobody's keeping score. And but I found for myself, I needed that 3-legged stool. I knew that I could go. I had a girlfriend that picked me up every morning, and we went into the forest.
Yeah, so good, so beautiful. So somebody, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, you can keep your mind busy. You can, with all the paperwork and stuff that has to happen. But I just didn't find that I got resolution. I didn't find that I was moving in a direction of healing until I really embraced spirituality.
That's where I was going. I'm so glad you said that. And also, one of our listeners was asking about homeopathy, because you used that. Was that one of your tools at the time? And what when you, and so you could talk a little bit about that too, but I really want you to go off on these cures, the cures for grief. And you mentioned number one being like the spirituality. Can you elaborate that a little more? And then other modalities, not what other people can do, but what really, let's focus on what you did, okay? Because there's so many things people can do, but hearing your story, I want to know what really spirituality means to you.
Yeah. So, we often hear body, mind, and soul, and we go, what the heck is that? We just say it without really thinking what it is. But I always say, if you're going to be on a sailboat in the ocean, you need 3 points of reference to navigate where you are in the world, in the planet. A medical doctor will use 3 points of symptoms, calls a syndrome, before they can actually diagnose. Homeopathy, we also need 3 points of reference. It's called a three-legged stool. Can't make too many decisions without having a three-legged stool. And I believe our body, mind, and soul is our three-legged stool. We can't sit on 2 legs. And so what is this spiritual aspect of ourself? And, I believe it's our soul. It's our true north. It's our, if you want to call them core values, we pretty much know when we step outside of them, we feel uncomfortable. We know when we step outside of our soul truth, we feel irritated. When we pray, we feel the energy of grace and ease. I believe we have a spiritual team. I went into listening to Michael, let me just, I'll think of the name in a second, but he is a psychiatrist who spent a lot of time doing hypnotherapy, helping people and find relief of physical ailments that the medical system couldn't seem to relieve. Michael Newton, PhD. He has books out called Lives Between Lives. I listened to those audiobooks a dozen times each. While he was doing past life regression with people trying to find reason for their physical ailment, they would find it in past life. And then he stumbled on Lives Between Lives, the spiritual nature of beingness between being on the planet. He recorded thousands and thousands and thousands of these people lives in regression. And then he became sort of an expert in the field. He's not the only one, but they could chronologize what was happening spiritual and what our reason for being here was, what growth we were wanting to attain. If you look at the Akashic, the book of life, which is in every spiritual writing that you can imagine, you can see it in so many films now and so many documentaries. So the book of life and what does that mean to us? So that was something that I found great relief in. I needed just more confirmation that he was okay. I really went into visualization. I have powerful visualizations that I journaled and I share online. So there's many times when I've connected. They say the pituitary gland, when you get into visualization, is really the spiritual nature of our brain and really connecting to source. A little different from meditation, but you want to get down into what's called heart harmony breathing. So at least a 5-5-7 breath. So 5 seconds on the way in, hold for 5 seconds on the way out, or 7 seconds on the way out. And within about 8 rounds of that breath, you've slowed your heart rate down enough that you change the brain wave that you're in, that you would be normally in waking. So that puts you into what's called a theta brainwave, which is natural to all of us. We enter theta on our way into sleep and our way out. This is your most receptive point. So if you're going to do manifestation, that's when you want to do it. But anyway, doing visualizations and connecting with the divine, I found extremely powerful. And then at some point I needed to stop because I found that I could lose myself in the beauty of that. And I am in this body on this earth at this time. And so for me to be grounded, I found at a certain point that I did less visualization. I used Ignatia as a homeopathic remedy. I used Rescue Remedy as a Bach flower remedy. I took baths with essential oils that were known to calm the central nervous system. I meditated. I did visualization. I walked in the forest. I spent time with friends that love me. And I don't know, I could keep going on and on.
Oh, no, this is so great. And actually, one of the people who are in the house, a regular Alan, he's really into essential oils, and he was just mentioning about the Bach flower remedies and rescue remedy, and you just went right in there. And what was the name of that author who you were talking?
Michael Newton. Michael Newton. He has Lives Between Lives. You could also do Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss. He was a neuroscientist, science doctor, I think, or maybe he was a psychiatrist. Also, worrying about losing their profession because they're being ostracized by their colleagues for bringing up information as they could no longer deny it. He has many, many books out. The one I love the most is Only Love is Real. So this idea of, being on the side of love in our psychology and staying positive versus, anything fear-based. Could also go into David R. Hawkins. I love his work. He's got 30 or 40 books out, but you can look at the energy of consciousness and know that anything below 200, which is courage, there's 1,000 points of energy in our emotional consciousness. Grief sits at about 75. So this is why we have so little energy. If you just think of that chart that's in his book as a reference, then you'll see that, there's a reason why you can't get out of bed. Because if you have 1,000 points of energy in your body available to you normally, but 925 is taken up and collapsed and compressed and somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can't get out of bed. Well, that makes sense because all your energy has just been condensed and trapped. And so we can see the energy of depression. We can see the energy of apathy, of grief, of sorrow. We can go into all those horrific, debilitating types of emotions. And we understand that grief contains almost all of life's stressors. So grief is just one word, but everything funnels into it, everything that you never want to have happen.
Yeah.
So that's why it feels so catastrophic, because it's just so, it feels insurmountable at times. And so how do we move it? And I'm here to say you can. There's grace, and to understand that the emotion of grief, like every emotion, is simply energy that's blocked. And so we don't have to think about trying to understand ourselves. It's not the event that's causing us the pain. Can't change that Willis is dead. So I can't fix that. And if I try to fix that, I'm going to be out of control for the rest of my life. But what is causing me pain is the emotional attachment to his death. So I can work with the emotional attachment to his event, to his death. And that's how we heal. It's not the event that's causing us the pain. It's our emotions that are attached to what's causing us. Yeah. And And so then we can learn how to move that.
Two things I want to address on that: the emotional attachment. I really, because we don't have that much time left, and I want people to really understand that, because I think I know what you mean about that. Is you don't want a man 150 pounds, 6'4", who can stand up on his own two legs. But and then the other thing I would love for you to address or talk to us about is the thereafter portion. Like, do you see, does Willis come to visit you? Does he comfort you? And how does that give you solace in all of this?
In the early days, I noticed as soon as I went to bed, my right side of my body, just the side of my body, would be hot. And so it seemed unnatural. Like I would, feel my chest, feel my other side. It just felt like, okay, it hasn't warmed up under the covers yet, but why is the right side of my body hot? And when I had my first Akashic reading, it took me about 3 months to reach out to someone, her name is Deanne Riendout, and that's who I took my Akashic training with. But she said, he wants you to know that he's laying down with you at night. And that if you feel his presence, that he wants you to know that it's him. Mm-hmm. And so that was comfort. The other thing, when I learned to do the Akashic, you're like, I can't do this, but he used to hold my hand and rub. He was one of these people that twiddled his thumbs. And so he would always rub my hand. It used to bug me. Now I wish that I could hold his hand, but
that's so funny. My husband does that to me too.
Yeah, and so over time, it sort of it feels raspy, right? But yeah. I would get this feeling of just energy back and forth. And so I have other grief clients, and she's like, my husband used to love to tickle my feet, and I'm going to bed at night and I get this energy on my toes, and I'm like, well, it's him. Yeah, it's so we start to see and witness, if we are open to that exploration, that there are signs. When I was talking with Willis before he died, I said, you have to send me a sign. And he says, I'll come back as a red-winged blackbird, which was his favorite bird as a child. And we have 100 of them at the lake. So it was a pretty sure bet on his part. But I was so positive that I went down there with my morning coffee the day after he died, and I held out my hand, waiting for a bird. And, they flew across the lake because we fed them every morning. But none of them landed in my hand. And so the next day I thought, well, he just didn't have enough time to figure it out. And so I went again with my morning coffee, and I held out my hand, and nothing happened. And the third day I was quite desperate. So I started praying to God.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, send me a sign.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
And the phone rang. Not a word of a lie. And this voice came through that I had never heard before that said, your chickens are here. Well, he had ordered chickens 18 months before when we were on a holiday in Mexico, and they never came. But they arrived on my door 3 days after he died. And when I had my Akashic reading 3 months afterwards, the first words out of her mouth was, I see feathers everywhere.
Nice.
And I said,
yeah. So beautiful. You're making me cry. But it is, I think this is so important, honey, and I'm so grateful that you're feeling this, because it's real. I mean, it's so real. I mean, death is not an easy thing, or letting go, and this is where the grace comes in, by still being alive and real and feeling. And he is here right now, feeding you this emotion, and it's a beautiful thing. And I just hope everybody who's witnessing this beautiful moment and watching this and realizing that it doesn't matter how long it is. And partly what's going on for me, and I'm waiting till you get yourself, so like, as I'm feeling it too. But like my mom, she and my dad, I can't even tell you my belief in the thereafter and the spirits and the energy. Maybe not the warm body yet, because my husband's still here, and I don't really imagine anybody else next to me. Especially when he does this to my fingers. That's going to be good if he goes first. Oh my gosh, I'll be welcoming that. But if we allow it to happen, I think that's the grace, you know? I think it's really an incredible opportunity. It's the really, really important thing is to have yourself open to that, because that's where do we think all these spirits go? We had an incredible guest on, Erin Bourbon, maybe it was a couple weeks ago. She's doing a grief retreat in Mexico. You could put her link in there. That would be great. And she is having everybody who's going on the retreat watch this movie called Coco. And anybody who's listening to the show right now, and you included, uh, Adele, if you haven't seen the movie Coco yet, it is it's an animated Pixar film, you know, and but it's so well done, and it really gets you thinking of like, where do all the souls go? And when we remember them and we talk about them and we bring them to special opportunities like this, where your sweet love is right here, they never die. And especially a wonderful, wonderful souls and spirits. So I hope you named a chicken after him. And that chicken had chicks, and now there's lots of juniors. And I mean, there's so many ways, right, that we can honor that. And I'm looking, we only have 15 minutes left. And one of our listeners saying, Alan, thank you for all your comments, by the way. He says, have you ever considered that the physical death may be your birth back to your home and true family and friends? And then maybe you prepare for the next different learning vacation. Well said, Alan. I love that. So, what do you have to say about Alan's comment there? That's pretty genius. I might steal that for my book, Alan, if you're okay with it. That's really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Alan's right on the money.
Yeah.
If you listen to some of Michael Newton's work, it's very much in that realm. That your friends and your pod, that quite often hear it called in different bodies of work, is celebrating you as you come back, and it is like a reunion of people or souls that you cannot hide from. They know everything about you, and they celebrate the wins and maybe the not so wins, and there is such a level of love there. I think it's just pure love. That is one thing that I did experience on the other side, was a feeling of unconditional love that was so beautiful, that I thought, well, if that's what he's feeling now, it's like, well, lucky him. So so I believe that Alan's on the money there.
Yeah. Well, that's super cool. And I want to see if anybody else has any comments or anything that you'd like to ask Adele. And we are putting some links in the chat for you all. One is to Erin's, she's doing the grieving workshop. We'll also put the link to her interview, because if you haven't seen that or weren't on the live show for that, we'll put Erin's interview on physical positivity in there. And there's a link on that. I'm sure a lot of people don't know about Akasha readings. It's more nuanced, and we'll also put the link to Coco in there. I think we put that. You guys got to watch that, and any comments on that would be very fun. But just what was the benefits of doing the Akasha reading? I mean, were you able to bring back that spirit and touch upon that? Give us a little definition about that before we sign off. And then I have a couple of announcements, and then if you have any closing words, we'll do it then. And I'm just going to go through these comments real quick. So talk about a little bit about the Akasha readings and how it helped you.
So it was a little bit of desperation, me going. It was something new for me, but I really love Deanne Riendow. She's an amazing individual, and so I reached out to her. The first words, as I said, were, "There's feathers everywhere, and Willis wants to know that the sign is real." Then she went into things that only I would know. She said, he's showing me a picture of him fishing. Did you guys like to fish? Do you have a plan to go fish? Blah, 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 blah. And he's saying he now has time. Well, Willis, for years, he dug a lake because lake is leisure and we live on the ocean. And he always say, when the work is done, I want to go fishing. And so, that again was such a confirmation to me. The other one she said was, did you guys lose children? And I said, yes, we lost 3 children, one of them in childbirth. He goes, well, and she actually said the 3. She says there's 3 light babies with him. He wants you to know that he's found them. And so, like, how would she know that? So there was so many such personal anecdotes in that 1 hour reading with her that there was no doubt in my that she was communicating with Willis. And I listened to that recording 3 or 4 times in the past couple of years. It's been 2 years since June, since he passed. Still feels a bit unfathomable. But
how long?
2 years. He died on June 5th, 2021. Yeah. So the first year is challenging. The second year is worse, just so you know. You can expect that a lot of people just think you're finished with your grief. It's been a year, get over it. And it's not really that way. So the second year can feel even a little bit tougher than the first, just so if you have a friend or a family member that's going through it, they're probably not through it in the second year. You have to go through all the first, and then I call it the terrible twos. We have it in so many ways, but yeah, there's, it's a process, but it's a worthy process. And all I can say, the growth that you're going to experience as you traverse and navigate a deep loss is phenomenal. If you're willing to do the work, and the work doesn't have to be hard, but you're going to transform in ways that you never thought was possible.
Wow. So beautiful, honey. Well, listen, I just a couple things I just want to share, and then I have something I want to say about everything. I guess that's for a whole nother show, so I won't say that. So, but what I want to appreciate so much is when there's so many different kinds of death, like a divorce, what happened in Maui, people's lives were lost, but their homes, their businesses. When we detox, we're losing something. We lose sides of our personalities. When we give up on an addiction, there's a grieving that goes on. There's so many losses, and there's so many signals and ways to prepare for death. And what you went through with your beautiful husband is just so. I just feel that I am just so deeply sorry for your losses. I'm sure everybody who's listening to this, because you've touched all of our hearts so deeply, Adele, and I want to thank you so much for that. But there's also there's also just the grief every day of seeing someone that you love deteriorate. It's one thing to get to pass in a car, or someone takes their life, or whatever, it's instant. But how do we prepare, and are we ever prepared? Like you said, Adele, earlier, you don't know. Like childbirth, all of a sudden the baby comes out and it's nothing like you experience. You never imagine the amount of love. So I just appreciate you so much for all you've shared today, your vulnerability, your accepting of just challenging questions popping up off topic and answering them so beautifully. And I also want all of our listeners to know that next week we have another extraordinary guest, Alana Cahoon, will be talking with us about finding harmony within. And she'll be talking about unleashing your inner wisdom for life and balance. And this woman is incredible. She's an author. She's got, oh my God, so much wisdom to help all of us. And we'll be taking us through exercises on how we can balance through life and death and dying and all of those things. So I hope you'll all tune in for that. And if you're new to the show, or if you're listening on one of the other channels, please pop your email in if you're not on the email list, and we will keep you posted on that. But one of the things that one of our listeners wrote in here, I think, again, it was you, Alan, that I wanted to just kind of be my closing words before you say closing words. And I want to thank you, Alan, for putting this in. But what he says, and I get so big when I'm reading this, don't wait until it's too late to express your love and your affection on this dimensional plane. Relieves lots of after effect stress. And I want to really thank you for that. That is so profoundly perfect for right now. That's living like the future matters. That's like living in the present moment. And that meditation or that kindness coming back to your breath. That was so perfect, Adele, that you brought that up. How that breath brings us here and now. And I want to just thank you again 100 times for showing up today, sharing your wisdom, your brilliance, your heart, your love, your compassion. And if you could just take us home with some one final beautiful aha for everyone to take with them, and then we'll let everybody get on with their beautiful day.
Yeah.
Or evening.
Well, I just want people to know that, there's more out there. We don't have to have proof of everything. I think there's enough wisdom that's already shown us that we are, a spiritual being on this planet in this physical body. And that I really believe that it's just a form of evolution that we go on without our physical body. And, there's going to be another adventure. So to enjoy the time that you're here and to take it all as, joy and brightness and curiosity. And if you're feeling pain, I think it's just, you haven't been taught how to release it. When we go into the forest and we scare a deer, what do? They shake it off. You give your dog a hard time, they shake it off. They don't carry it with them, right? But human beings, we tend to carry our pain, and we don't have to. We can go on and have all the wisdom that came with that experience without feeling the hurt and the pain that came with it.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Adele. And everybody, if we have her website in here several times, if you're feeling sad or know someone who is or is having trouble struggling, Adele is giving away a complimentary call if anybody wants to converse with her. So and so sorry, I wanted to introduce Cindy Little. She had to pop off the call. She was another one of our speakers, and she was amazing. She lost a son, and Erin had lost her daughter. So there's all phases, but the thing is we find them when we talk about them. We find them in our tears, and we find them in honoring them, no matter what it is. We just bring them here with us. So you guys, thank you again. I want to thank everybody who showed up today on the live. Robin, it's so great to see you, all of you. Really appreciate everybody in the Facebook group too. And if you're listening to this on the replay, we hope you will come on a live show soon. And also, if you would like to be a guest, we're taking guests into December, January now. So or if you know somebody who would make a good guest, we're always open. There's a waiting list, but it's fun and it's worth it and gives us time to prepare. And Adele, you and I will be in touch soon. Adele is going to be one of the people represented in my book, my new book, Death, What Is It Good For? Absolutely something. And she is going to be one of the experts who's going to be answering questions in the book. So you'll learn a lot more about her. And Adele is also coming out with a book. What's the name of the book, Adele, that you're doing?
It's called Everybody Hurts, Together We Rise.
Ooh, I love that. So when you come out with that book, we'll have you back on the show and have you read an excerpt from that. And we'll love to share that with all of our listeners and people. Remember, you guys, if you're not in the Facebook group, we'll pop that link in there too on this chat. Copy the chat. There's so many good resources for you in there that Adele has provided. And again, if you missed something and you want to just reach out to her, please give her a shout out. And you guys have an absolutely blessed, beautiful rest of your 24 hours until we meet again. And big, big love and aloha.